Hey there, you're listening to Not Another TV Podcast. This is episode 70, the week of January 5th, 2025. That can't be a real year. Hang on, I need to check my notes. Nope, that's right. Fuck you. Okay,
That's right.
let's start again. Don't start overs. 2025. Whatever. My name's Drew Koenig. As always, I am here with my co-host, Mads Sassy. Mads, how we doing? New year, new podcast.
We're surviving.
Yes.
We'll see how long it takes.
Yep. We have coming into the new year, we are now past 2 years with this podcast.
Wow.
Not the two of us, but the podcast in general.
No, I know, but still amazing.
That's our 2 year
I've done at least a year with you.
About a year and a half? I don't know.
Sounds about right.
Time is squishy. But yeah, we started first thing January 2023. So nice 2 years.
Cool.
How time has gone by.
Meanwhile, I celebrated 15 years of being a diabetic this week, and I was like, that doesn't seem real.
Yep.
Way to go, modern medicine. I didn't die 15 years ago.
No, I did kind of have a similar feeling over the weekend because I went to be part of my sister's wedding, my youngest sister, who is 21 and is a baby. And yeah, no part of that feels right or accurate to be like, oh, she's getting married. Yeah, naturally. Sure.
Fantastic.
Makes total sense in my brain.
It's crazy.
Although I did feel like I unlocked some sort of achievement because I was labeled as a bridesmaid in that wedding.
Yes.
I was like, I'm into this. Yep. All right.
Gender achievement unlocked.
It did feel like a gender achievement. I was like, cool, I'm into this. Yeah. It was funny though, like the ways that like even when like you're being really mindful of like, gender as a construct and that whole thing can be very fluid and wishy-washy, and like my sisters have always been very conscientious of who I am. Ever since I said that I was non-binary. Even in that, you can still fall into like the pitfalls of like very gender essential roles, especially like in a wedding, because it's still like women have bouquets and men have boutonnieres, and
right.
all the men are, I'm still wearing a suit and all the women are in dresses. It's like even when you're trying hard to be open-eyed about stuff, you're still like you can still so easily fall into like the traps of like how weddings are done.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Just that as like a kind of microcosm of how we still view gender. I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's definitely been topics of conversation. Like, speaking of award shows, it's still a topic of conversation, especially when someone who doesn't identify as a specific gender gets nominated for an award of some kind. It's like, okay, but what category do we put them in? And oftentimes they get put in the category from their birth gender. And it's like, but that's not really correct either.
Right.
This is why I think award shows should not have gendered categories. It should just be best performer in this lead role, and then you have to pit everybody together.
Right, and then I think the counter argument of that is then men will dominate that category. Not to fall prey to a particularly turfy talking point, but
no, in a industry still sucks kind of way.
yeah, the industry still sucks. You're still gonna get like the straight white men are nominated for everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a big example of that is Emma Darcy being nominated for a bunch of stuff, being nominated for like House of the Dragon, a performance that I understand is worthy of nomination, but they are non-binary.
Yep.
So that becomes a thing of like, well, what do you do? Where do you put it? And then if you do like the the most like moral and righteous standpoint of I will just not be nominated for this, then you are just not nominated, you know?
Right, and that actually is a standpoint that an actor in the Broadway musical & Juliet, the year that & Juliet was up for Tony nominations, this person played one of the main side roles. So had the potential of being up for featured actor or whatever the hell the category is called in the Tonys. And they said point blank, don't bother nominating me because I don't want to be put into a gendered role in order to be nominated. And I just remember the stink that some people had about it because they were like, well, the assumption that you have that you'd be nominated at all. And it's like, excuse me, this is one of the top shows on Broadway right now. Of course, they have that positive assumption that they would be nominated.
Right.
Their performance is talked about in a lot of theater circles. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to have been nominated. But it comes down to, okay, you either suck it up and deal with the industry's gender standards, or you just say, well, thanks, but no thanks, I'm not going to be nominated.
Right.
And it just depends on how you feel about awards.
So Matt, how was your Christmas / New Year's? Because we've been off for a couple of weeks, real time.
It was good. It's just weird when it's in the center of the week because it throws off my whole semblance of being. Um, there was one point in this 2 weeks that I was supposed to go to a doctor's appointment on January 2nd, and I knew in theory that I had this appointment. Obviously, I made the appointment, and it was in my calendar. But they sent me a reminder, like, at the start of last week. So, like, what, the 29th? And I literally was just like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot that I had that coming up. Wait, it's not January. And I was like, looking at the calendar, I'm like, oh, yes, it is. Like, I was thinking, oh, it'd be next Monday. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh, the 2nd is next Monday. No, it's not. It's Thursday. So it was a fun time trying to figure out what day of the week it was for me at my job, especially. Um, because I have certain assignments on certain days. And so I'd be like going along doing my work, and I'd get a message from someone. They'd be like, aren't you supposed to post this thing on Thursday mornings? And I'm like, but it's not Thursday, it's Monday. And they're like, no, it's Thursday. It was a mess. I'm finally back on the right time schedule, but like, it was a mess.
Right.
But it was a fun holiday, very relaxing.
Yeah, same here. It is weird because I was like, we're gonna be out for 2 weeks. I'm gonna get like so much editing done. I'm gonna do all this stuff, and then Christmas one week, and then I took like 2 days to like go out and get a new couch with like somebody that relatives had given me. Because when I moved, I got rid of my nice old couch because it wouldn't fit up the stairwell. When I moved, so I got a real shitty couch online for like 100, like really, on the cheap, like $100 or something. Did like all of that after Christmas, and it was like Christmas and doing that, then work, bunch of work stuff, and then sister's wedding. So it's like, oh, I didn't have time to do anything actually. But it was a fun, good holidays overall.
Yeah, I watch a lot of American history centered documentaries, and to the point that this afternoon, when Karen and I were looking for something to watch, I like turned on one of the streaming services, and I like was scrolling, and I paused on one of the documentaries I had been watching, and Karen literally goes, "No, I refuse, no more." And I was like, "No, I'm not turning this on. I'm just stopping because I'm pausing for a second to look at something on my phone. I'm sorry. I apologize." Because she's like, listen, I will watch documentaries as long as they're true crime. I go, yeah, I was like, yes, that's technically a documentary, but that's not a documentary.
I just can't.
I'm like, I understand. I am an American history buff. I'm weird. I get it. but I did enjoy having a little extra time to like watch stuff like that
Right.
these past couple weeks. That was nice. It's like getting caught up on the documentaries I've had on a to be watched pile for a while now.
So what news did we miss while we have been away?
Yeah, the only things I can think of are like news stuff, and that's like not what we're looking at.
Well, one thing that we didn't cover the last time in a proper episode, but did in fact happen was Warner Brothers is no longer doing Sesame Street,
Oh yeah.
which I saw someone say this online, but there's a line from the Aaron Sorkin show Sports Night, where a line that Clark Gregg says, which is like, if you can't make this sports show work, then you don't belong in this industry. And it's the same kind of thing of like, if you can't make Looney Tunes and Sesame Street and DC work, then you don't belong in this industry. You just don't belong anywhere. Like, if you can't make Sesame Street work for you, get out. Like,
Then
I
you've
don't know.
lost sight of what's
Yeah,
important.
I don't know what else to tell you. Like, Sesame Street is a. I dare you to find a more winning brand.
Right.
Like, just true Clown Town hour.
Honestly, it's been very sad to see the slow descent of PBS in general, like
Mhm.
public broadcast, like free public broadcasting, like the content available is not worth it anymore. And it's like, I remember being a kid and there being a plethora of educational related shows I could pick out on PBS and watch.
Right.
Like, it's insane.
Right. Yeah. So it's very disappointing. A world without Sesame Street is just wrong. Like, it's just, we need to reassess. Seriously, reassess what we're doing.
Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry. You can't tell me that we're just gonna have to say goodbye to Elmo and Big Bird. And like, come on, they're more iconic than their creator. Like,
Yeah, it's really nuts.
someone also recently made the comment on social media regarding kids programming these days is that, you think about it, okay, when we were kids, there's main shows were like Sesame Street and like Hey Arnold and like all these different things that were very slow and not quiet, but also not very loud, if that makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
it was not a sensory overload to watch these shows. And now you've got television shows that like so much is happening. I'm just like, how are kids' brains not rotting out of their heads just watching 10 minutes of this? Like, because I don't know, it's so noisy and musical and something has to be happening at all times and it has to be loud and boisterous and quick, and it's like, no, we need slow and steady, like someone talking a normal cadence instead of weird voices. Like, we need to go back to that.
Speaking of children's programming, it was announced that there's going to be a Bluey movie,
Oh,
which is very exciting for all of the adults that really love Bluey.
I did see that. I am not one of those adults that likes Bluey. Not that I haven't seen it, so I
Yeah,
can't say
it's
whether I
important to
like it or
clarify
not.
that you're not one of the adults that doesn't like Bluey.
I'm just one of the adults that hasn't seen Bluey. Sorry, Australian sheepdogs. I have not gotten to know you.
But
But yeah.
they'll be very interesting based on especially based on what how I heard Bluey ended.
Uh huh.
Um, so I'll be interested. I might have to catch up on. Well, I might have to get into Bluey this year. Might have to be the thing we do. Which reminds me, I remember this after we concluded our best of the year episode. Um, we did not talk about our New Year's resolutions.
Oh yeah, we didn't.
I don't have a New Year's resolution, but let's talk about how it ended up. So, Mads, your New Year's resolution was to watch a lot more animated TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
So, how did that go for you?
Well, I mean, I did watch more. Considering prior to this past year, my going rate for animated shows is like 1.
Mm,
Um I watched Bad Batch with you, which I hadn't really watched prior to this. I'm now fully on the Lower Decks train. I'm
just in
fully
time.
on the
Just in time.
I'm fully on the Adventure Time train. Way too late. But I just managed to squeak by on the last little car as it was leaving the station.
Mm.
Um, and I also watched Arcane, and I feel like there was another animated thing in there somewhere. Yeah, I mean, I watched quite. I feel like I did pretty good. Um, in terms of picking up an animated show that was not something we watched for the podcast, did not happen. So technically, you helped me achieve my goal halfway because I'm gonna not call that a full achievement because podcast it should have been also doing it on my own, and I didn't do much of it on my own.
Right. Fair. But you did still watch it. So,
I did. I did still watch animated stuff.
yeah.
Oh, and obviously like Adventures of Superman, things like that.
Right.
So,
Right.
stuff that I probably would have picked up on my own. I just had the excuse of the podcast to really push me to do it.
Right. My New Year's resolution was to watch more reality TV shows, which started off strong. And I talked about this earlier, but it's just so hard to watch reality shows. Like, just on a pure
Mm,
time commitment level, the amount of the amount of, like, really energy that it takes to stay current on reality shows like Big Brother or Survivor. Even just like the big ones, Big Brother and Survivor, and Amazing Race. So much of it comes out, and it's just so difficult. Like, for example, The Traders UK just started back up, um, and they have episodes coming out every day. How am I expected to watch that? Like, how? I'm very studious with my TV watching, but even that feels like a lot. And this is coming from me.
mm-hmm.
Um, so, like, I did watch. I guess the stuff I watched was like easier to digest. So, like, I watched a bunch of Food Network baking shows at the beginning of the year, and I tried to watch Survivor. I tried watching Big Brother. It's just so easy to fall off. I think we can call that a resounding failure. And I won't try this again.
That's fair. I technically did make resolutions for television for this year, but
Mhm.
I know you didn't.
I'm sure I can come up with one if you give me 30 seconds.
All right, well, I'll talk about my resolutions for this year. I'll give you a little time.
Okay.
So my resolutions for this year are actually to finally tackle 2 shows on my list of shows that aired ages ago that I've been wanting to watch. One of them is going to be The Leftovers. I was kind of spurred on by this by ATX announcing that they're doing a reunion panel for The Leftovers, and I was like, "Oh, well, look at that. I've been meaning to watch that. Perfect timing. I'll get it done in the first half of the year." And in the second half of the year, my goal is to watch. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to tackle Buffy or if I'm going to tackle X Files, but I'm leaning more towards X Files. But yeah, those are my goals for this year: is to watch The Leftovers and either the X Files or Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay. I mean, those are good goals. Those are very good goals.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I just came up with one, and this is ambitious.
Okay.
But
We like ambition.
I feel confident in myself. So my goal for this year, and it's gonna be fucking wild, is to go through the top 250 TV shows on IMDb and watch as much of that as I can.
Oh, interesting. It's very similar to my actor goal that I do each year for movies, where I pick a specific actor and I try to go through their entire IMDb um, repertoire in order to say, "Oh yes, I've watched everything this actor has done: the good, the bad, and the ugly."
Right.
It's very similar. I think you can do it. I have faith in you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel very heartened because at like a bunch of those in the top 20 are like Planet Earth and Planet Earth 2 and Blue Planet and Cosmos.
I would watch those.
Like
They're very soothing.
so many in the top 20 are just like, here's a nature documentary that's like 5 episodes long.
Because nature documentaries are ASMR. They are very, very soothing.
Yes, absolutely.
That's how you'll knock it out. Just put it on as you're starting to get tired for the night, and you're just like, "Put me to sleep, please."
Exactly. But yeah, I feel like this is. I don't want to say this is doable. This probably will still be a failure.
Mhm.
There's probably a lot of this will probably not get watched. But I will
I
make
have I have plans to watch The Americas, which is a new nature documentary coming out, hosted
Oh
by
yeah,
Tom Hanks.
oh yeah. I saw the preview for that about 50 times before Wicked.
Listen. They're advertising it very hard. We saw it twice in previews for Sonic 3, which I didn't understand why there was two previews for this in a movie theater, but hey, you do you.
Those will be our New Year's resolutions. We'll try to check in on that throughout the year, unless we forget again, which is I won't say it's unlikely.
Oh, it's very likely.
It's likely. Let's move on into the GOAT. So the GOAT is a weekly segment we do here on the podcast where myself and Mads nominate a best TV character or episode of all time and pit them against each other on a poll on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr.
Mhm.
So we're still waiting for a bunch of results to come in. We're at the end of our batch. I think this will be the last one for this current batch of go picks that we're in before we go into a redemption round. But we'll be taking a small break from that while we do a little catch up. But this week, in honor of having a bunch of series finales, we are talking about the best series finale, which was made slightly more complicated because we have already done a couple series finales already for the GOAT. But I guess the way I want to start this off is series finales are so monstrously hard to do.
Mhm.
more than perhaps any other part of television. It is so difficult to really accomplish a good series finale, which became apparent as I was really going through the list of notable series finales. And I was like, I didn't care for that. I didn't care for that. I didn't care for that. That wasn't great.
Mm.
We'd already gone through 5 seasons of bad TV show by the time that came by. So series finales can be a very mixed bag.
Mhm. And also, it's funny when like I this isn't the show I picked, but like I just keep thinking about a few years ago when Supernatural finally ended. A lot of people were very angry at the ending, and I was like, I don't know, I don't see any other way this show could have ended. I thought it was perfect. But people were mad because they're like, Kiss wasn't there, and I'm like, and so? it started with the brothers, it ends with the brothers. You can't have those extra characters floating around. But also, I also took into account the fact that it was shot during the pandemic when they couldn't bring in a lot of extra people.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed their plans for the finale. And I'm like, they did a decent job considering they had to change things. But also, the show needed to end 10 years prior. So, really, what have we been doing?
Yeah. I will go first with our submission for the GOAT.
All right.
I thought long and hard about what I wanted to choose. And in a world where I already picked Lost, came up with what I thought was a very good alternate choice, which is the series finale of Scrubs,
Okay.
which I think is just such an incredibly well executed ending to the show proper. Season 9 is its own thing. It's a spinoff. It might be attached to Scrubs, but that is a spinoff. It is constructed as a spinoff. This is where this is where Scrubs proper ended. And
Mm-hmm.
I think just the catharsis in that of JD finally leaving the hospital and going off and like going in his own direction, and getting a bunch of like these really wonderful goodbyes from a bunch of characters that we've spent time with and developed over 8 seasons. Um, it's just extremely well done, and there are certain parts of it that shouldn't work. JD walking down a hallway and seeing a bunch of the side characters that have appeared throughout the show shouldn't work. That's silly and goofy as hell, but it hits. And the Book of Love sequence, where JD is imagining what happens of his life and his friend's life over the years after the show proper ends, is really powerful and it's really affecting. And again, probably shouldn't. It should be silly. It should be a little sillier than it is. But so much of the show had already been silly, had been so like over the top zany, that this gets to be like really tied into the emotion. And a show that was always really good about like pivoting from the zany madcap to the really strong, profound emotion in any situation. And I think it really
Mm-hmm.
dials in on that so wonderfully. There are so many good performances throughout this. Like usual, I think Zach Braff is really good. John C. McGinley is so good. Just as he's trying to be stoic and finally just like says what he really feels at the very end. Yeah, it's a fantastic series finale. So that's my pick, the series finale of Scrubs.
Awesome. So mine was gonna be a pick that might seem a little bit out there, but I guess if you
Oh boy.
know the types of shows I like, it might not be. Mostly because again, there are certain shows that I loved and I love their finales for them, but like I feel like I've talked enough about them on this show for GOAT reasons that aren't series finale reasons. So instead I'm gonna go with Sons of Anarchy series finale. And I really like this one because I felt like it was the best way to end this show. Was the show perfect from start to finish? No. There were definitely moments in this show where I was just like, okay, you jumped the shark a little bit there. Or, that was a little too much, whatever. But by the end, there's only one way forward for Jax, and that was to come to the realization that he does come into in this series finale, which is that his two boys will never be able to grow up and have a normal life if he's still around. And they can't grow up idolizing him either. And so he makes rash decisions that he knows in the long run his sons will hate him for, because he realized most of his life he idolized his father, and that's why he ended up becoming, part of the Sons of Anarchy bike group, and he wanted to, emulate what his father wasn't able to do, and kind of go beyond what his father wanted for the club, all these things, and he couldn't do it because just his father was an idealist, and idealism doesn't really work with biker clubs. Not sure if you know this, but like when you are a biker club, it's not really easy to be idealistic and still make good money and live the life you want. And so in the end, he chooses to send his two boys with his ex-wife, who he had a very contentious relationship with the whole series, considering in the series premiere, she was hopped up on heroin, causing her to give birth to their child early, and that child almost died from a heart condition because she was on drugs the whole time. Like, they have a very contentious relationship. So it was great in that final season to see him kind of go back towards respecting her, to the point where he was like, I want you to take both of my sons, even though one of them is not yours. And I want you to raise them and take care of them. And then he goes off and he settles everything with the club. He gives the president patch to Chibs and gives the vice president patch to Tig. And, he just said, he says, I'm going off, I'm leaving, I'm done, with this life. And it ends with a great montage with the song, Come Join the Murder, which is great. And there was a lot of Crow references in those final moments, as well. And he, quote unquote, commits suicide, letting his bike drift into the path of a 18-wheeler, um, much in the same vein of his father's death. And so it was just felt like a very final, very closed circle ending. And I felt like the show did a good job of wrapping everything up, but not too beautifully. Like, there was still room for growth and room for fan interpretation, things like that. But yeah, my series finale that I picked is Sons of Anarchy.
You are so wildly out on a limb, and I refuse to get struck with the same bolt of lightning as you.
Listen, my other top choices are gonna be Fringe and Lost, and we can't do either of those. So, so I had to go with the next best choices. This was actually honestly, I know I get a lot of crap. I'm gonna get a lot of crap for it, but it was a show that surprised me. I did not think I was gonna like it going into it, because it's very violent. It's not very PC, but I still somewhat enjoyed it. And Katie Seagal killed it for the entire series, and her death was just so chef's kiss. Unfortunately, it did not happen in the series finale. Otherwise, I would have talked about it. But yeah, it's a wild card. I'm a person with multitudes.
Mm-hmm. Truly. You can vote for either of these on Instagram, Tumblr, and Blue Sky, and you'll have 2 days to vote till the poll will close. And be sure to like and share it on all your social platforms. Without anything else, let's move on into the main part of our show. As always, our first show to kick us off with our week of television is Dimension 20, Misfits and Magic. I almost said The Unsleeping City. That's how long we did The Unsleeping City for. Dimension 20, Misfits and Magic, episode 3, titled Family on 6. Yeah, there's a, there's a lot. There's a lot in this episode. There's both like a lot and also not that much. It feels like the sheer shenanigans we got up to was a lot, but like actual plot stuff was like very minimal, which I think is a very interesting dichotomy. It does feel very D&D in that way.
It was fun.
Yeah, yeah. Brennan is doing a lot. He is really
Yeah,
just doing the most.
he really is, and I thoroughly enjoyed him in this episode because like there was so much unexpected twists and turns with his character.
Right. Yes, yes. But it also does make you understand like a lot of the backlash that Brennan got for this season. Whereas
Yeah.
we've talked about that a little bit, but like there is a certain point where it does feel like it's the Brennan show and then his side his side players, you know?
Mhm.
Which I don't know if I was Brennan how I would necessarily modulate that, but I think Brennan ends up taking up so much space, especially in this episode where Brennan is like, doing a lot of things, and I think he just ends up taking like a lot of that oxygen, which isn't to say that the others aren't like doing a lot of cool and interesting things. Jammer
Yeah.
Jammer deciding that he's just gonna be all in on Scuppers is very funny.
I thoroughly enjoyed that part of the episode. Like them playing and then him like realizing, or not him realizing, him being told that like part of his magic is that he's able to be charming and persuasive without realizing he's doing it. And it comes into play a lot when he's on team sports. And I was like, that is like such a genius character quality that I literally had to pause and think on it for a bit, because I was like, I never would have thought of that being like an actual thing. Like, yes, I know some people are really good at team sports and really good at like being the person on the team that gets everyone else like jammed and excited about doing this team activity. But I didn't think about it as like in terms of a thing that can be counted on in a game like D&D. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like I just was like thinking about I'm like, "Oh my god, that is genius." So genius.
Yeah, and also that being a quality that's like worthwhile,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of pop culture gets trapped in the mindset of the jock who is just the jock,
Mhm.
of that person who only exists in that mode, the quarterback who's only really good at football, and when he doesn't have football anymore, he's gonna have nothing. And he's a stupid man child or whatever. And here you have Jammer, who is so good at basketball and is so passionate about basketball, but also feeds into him, but is not
Mhm.
the essential element of him. You know, the essential of him is
Right.
he's good at rallying people.
Yeah.
So I really like that adjustment to the trope.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, really making Jammer, not to say that you needed to make him sympathetic, because he was Lou Wilson and he was already sympathetic. He was already a character that you wanted to root for, but really making that feel so lived in.
Yeah, and I felt like it added more to the character itself. Like it gave him that little bit more, especially when they started playing the game. I appreciated how he handled getting the rest of the team to feel good about themselves and their abilities, even if their abilities really were non-existent. But also I appreciated that charm of him coming into play at the end of the game when he's just like, listen, they're gonna see, we're gonna throw hands. Don't worry, we're gonna throw hands. We have an appointment to throw hands, but we're also going to shake hands at the end of the game because that's a sportsmanship thing to do. And then he goes and he only shakes the hands of the first two people, which were really nice to them. And then he says, fuck it, I ain't doing no more.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it just added more layers to Jammer, and I love him even more.
yeah. To the point that like when Evan's like, "That's my best friend," you're like, I get it. Like if I
Hmm.
met Jammer, I'd be like, "Yeah, that guy is cool, and I want him to be my best friend."
Yep,
Like,
exactly.
and it does. I do think like that character, like that connector, is like so much more powerful, like on an Evan basis, because like how deeply sad Brennan made that man.
Hmm.
To know everything that we know about Evan, and for him to be like, "That's my best friend and I love him,"
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh, that's really good. It's really good." This isn't the direction Misfits and Magic takes, but the dynamic between Jammer and Evan is just so good. I was like, this could have been this could have been it. It's not, but it
Hmm.
could have been.
Right, exactly.
And part of that is just down to like how strong Brennan and Lou play with each other,
Hmm.
you know, because they've done multiple seasons of Dimension 20 together at this point. So, like, that is just so fine tuned. In that, like, the one who really surprises me like by how good she is, and like kind
Mm-hmm.
of how new she is, like everyone else, is Danielle, because she's just so strong. Like all of her, like her dynamic with like both Lou and Brennan is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, like that scene you mentioned where Jabber's gonna shake everyone's hand, and Sam is just like right there with him,
Yeah.
100% matching his energy.
Yep.
It's just it's really good.
And I love that that handshaking ended up with the two of them having dates.
Oh, it's so,
He's like, she's like, I think I got a date. He goes, me too. And I'm like, I love this for the both of you.
what did you think of this parody of Quidditch?
Listen, I find everything amusing with this because it's so clear that they're like, we want nothing to do with the trash human that created the actual thing that we're parodying, but we're still going to make this slightly more fun.
Right.
And it's also going to make sense.
Yeah, because they're right. If you can just catch a ball and you win the game, like there's no point in even playing the game.
Right.
It's fucking stupid.
But I will say, knowing what I know about Quidditch, is that, like, yes, that's a very simple way of explaining Quidditch, but there is the whole thing that if you catch the snitch at the wrong moment and your team is too far behind,
Mm,
you're not going to win the game. The other team will still win because
right.
the snitch is only worth X number of points. But that's really sad if you're that far behind because
Yeah.
what have you been doing?
You're at that point you're not winning anyways. It's stupid.
It's like, wait, the snitch is worth 150 points, but sometimes people catch it and they're not winners. And I'm like, oh, what's the point of catching it at that point then? You're still losers.
It's fucking stupid.
So anyway, yeah, this was about a lot more straightforward and it was a lot more fun. And I did enjoy the moment of Evan being like, "Oh, I'm not going to accomplish getting on a broom and getting it to go in the air." And then he manages to do it without realizing it. I thought that was kind of cool. And it kind of reminded me of Neville
Hmm.
from the series that we don't engage with his first introduction to a broom. He gets on the broom and he somehow manages to get up in the air and he doesn't know what's happening and it takes him on this ride and he's just freaking out and it's like Evan's a bit more calm, but
Right.
similar concept. I think, though, not to switch gears but also to kind of switch gears, my favorite thing about this episode was actually Dream's transformation that happens during the sneaky wand attack that's happening during this game, when she goes to protect
Hmm.
Evan, and her transformation away from being goth to being full on anime pixie dream girl.
Right. Yes. I love that like vocal modulation, both from Erica and also from Brennan,
Hmm.
where they're like, we're now playing radically different versions of this character.
Yeah, and not for nothing, Brennan's Venom-esque voice was
It's
phenomenal.
so good.
So good. It's very Tom Hardy sounding, and I'm like, sir, are you being Tom Hardy? Because that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love that Dream and Erica are just kind of like sitting there, like, oh my god, you just got hotter. Please keep talking like this.
But it is also the comedy of saying like very normal things in that voice of Brennan's.
Yeah.
Like I remember specifically the line of like, "I'm just a normal guy," or what was it? "I'm not a character."
Yes.
In that voice, it's just really
I'm just a normal guy. It's like, no, you're not.
funny.
But also, I love the way that the four of them get around this thing that's taking over Evan is that Sam uses her persuasion and her charm to just convince these things, these entities to just leave Evan alone. The magic of D&D. Like I just love D&D. Like it's so great.
Right, and like, and Sam is like kind of the the inverse of Jammer in like
Mhm.
that respect of like taking something that like I think our normal impulses like kind of disregard, where Jammer has the kind of jock mentality, and Sam has that streamer influencer
Mhm.
thing going on, and our impulse, which isn't entirely misplaced, is to be like, that's stupid and dumb and worthless.
Right.
But it is so baked into Sam. The same thing that like draws viewers in and gets people to watch her on a stream.
Yeah.
Same thing that can be turned against, you know, unholy angels
Right.
or whatever, biblically accurate angels or whatever they were.
I also like the name that they created for the nurse.
Oh, it's so good, and also just like that design
Mhm.
where you're just it's really like Hagrid, but in like pastels, and like even like the
Yeah.
beard is pink. Yeah, it's so delightful, and that whole conversation I think is really good, where you do get to see Evan like for the first time having this moment of like, oh, someone gets it, oh, someone understands, and
Yep.
they're able to talk to me about that understanding.
Mhm.
Where like even like the other adults, like at Galpenny are like, that's weird, you're weird, or it's like, that's weird, you're weird, and this is alarming. The nurse can just be like, yes, that's weird, but like, here's what you can do, and here's your options, and here's the way that we can like intellectually and emotionally interact with this, which was just very nice to see. And I think both Brennan and Abria play that really well.
Yeah, I enjoy I'm actually enjoying Misfits and Magic a lot more
Yeah.
than I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel about it going into it. But I'm definitely liking it. I'm getting a lot more of an appreciation for Erica. She's so good. Like just so good. And I love her little oh no's when she's supposed to be rolling, like when she's hoping that she'll get a really high roll and she gets like a 3 and she just is
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Oh no." Like it happens when she says, "I'm going to use a protection spell and protect myself and Evan." And she's like, "All right, I'm going to get out the box of doom and we're going to do this." And she goes, "Oh no." Because she rolls a terrible roll and does not do much to help.
Erica's so good. I think we also have to talk, because I don't think we've really mentioned this, but how good the like illustrations in this series are, or in this season is.
Oh my god, they're so good.
Like it's
And
really
like how they change, when the characters alter themselves in some way, like or get an upgrade of some kind, like they change and they still look so good.
it's little things like that. In a season where you don't really have, you don't have the sets, you don't have the minis.
Mhm.
You'll see like a lot of the physical stuff being added in, you know not just the illustrations, but also like the wands and a lot of the stuff that Bria hands to them.
Yeah.
Like I always really appreciate like the emphasis that they put on like actual stuff that you can see, and that isn't just like theater of the mind D&D.
Right.
Also, speaking of that, the physical stuff, Abrea bringing out the box of doom, and her sheer giddiness at being able to kill Brennan is so
Yes.
funny.
She's like, I get to use your own box of doom against you." Like she was so excited.
Next week is the actual end of Misfits and Magic, which is a wild thought to consider.
Mhm.
Four episodes is just not enough for a D&D season.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's that weird era where it's like you're not a one shot, but you're not like even like a normal size season for a side campaign.
Mhm.
It's like you're too much, and you're also not enough. We will get to that next week. Let's move on to our next show, which is Doctor Who, which is back momentarily for its Christmas special entitled "Joy to the World." So, Bats, what did you think of this Christmas special?
I found it to be okay. It was charming, it was cute, but like I don't know, I felt like not a whole lot happened. It felt very long to me, and maybe that's just me. However, I will say that I do wish I could go to the Time Hotel and go through a few of those doors because I'm curious.
So I this isn't the worst Moffat Christmas special.
Yeah.
He has made far worse. Far worse.
Far worse, definitely.
This isn't A Christmas Carol. This is much better than that. But it's still I felt wanting. I think that the Time Hotel is a cool idea. That is a cool conceit, especially for like Doctor Who.
Mhm.
But yeah, just it just felt very underwhelming to me. And yeah, I just felt like there wasn't a lot there. I don't have a thing that I can really point to of like I don't really like that. Like the doctor's year at the regular hotel is weird, but it's like it's very enjoyable, and I like that
Mhm.
character that he spends time with, and then like I think Nicola Coughlan is good in anything that she is.
Yeah, it was also nice to see Joel Fry for the like 5 seconds that we had him. But yeah, I felt like I had to watch it twice to get the point of it. It just felt very I felt like I shouldn't have to watch a Christmas special twice to understand it.
Right, right. And also, and this is more of an amorphous feeling that I have. The COVID stuff is really weird.
Mhm.
I just don't. It doesn't. I hate to say that it doesn't belong here, but it doesn't. I don't know what it's trying to say.
We're almost 5 years out from that level of COVID. We can stop talking about it.
Right. I don't know what I don't know what the mess like what it's trying to say about COVID and that time we lived in and Joy's response to COVID afterwards.
Mhm.
And also, I just don't love talking about the quarantine area of COVID as nonsense. It scratches a wrong part of my brain.
Mhm.
I just like viscerally I don't enjoy that. Even if like I kind of understand what she's saying in that moment, it doesn't feel good. I think it's very fine. I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. And I appreciated the guest stars, but it also left me kind of wondering where we're going with the new season of Who. And I feel like yes, Christmas specials aren't supposed to like give us an idea, but like at the same time, it still felt like, okay, but where are we going? Like we don't know where we're going with this character because other Christmas specials, like the ones that I think of the most, like are the one that introduces Donna. And then we find out that she comes back into play, not the coming season, but the season after that, whatever. But like, we're like, oh, this is an interesting character that's been introduced. It's clear that she's going to come back around because the doctor interacts well with her. Things like that. I will say this episode's meta ness by having the doctor being, while he was at the regular hotel, finding little TARDIS knickknacks on the internet. The meta ness of that was hilarious.
That was very
He's like, he was like, I don't know. There just seems to be a lot of a lot of things in this shape that I can buy on the internet. And I'm like, that is silly. It's very silly.
and I did really enjoy the delivery when the two doctors interactive. This is why no one likes you.
Yes.
But again, that brought into like the whole thing of like you don't have any chairs on the TARDIS. Why is that? And that feels like a thing of like, oh, we flirted with it a little bit, and then I don't feel like there's any follow through on that. There's no like,
Mhm.
well, no. I just feel like there's nothing there. It is a road
Yeah.
that leads nowhere. Anyway, I will say I did enjoy seeing Ruby back
Yeah.
for like
Even if it was just for a hot
yeah, just
second.
for a
Like
hot
it was
second.
still really
I did
nice.
like seeing her. So let's continue on to our next show, which is What If, which is streaming on Disney Plus with its third season. And this is Marvel's animated TV series going through different possible alternatives of things that could have happened in the MCU and
Mhm.
related field. And so this is the final season. We will not see any more What If after this. And I can't say that I feel too bad about that.
Yeah, I didn't really like the last season, which is why it was one of the things that I put on the last of my list of things to watch and then didn't get to. So
Yeah, a lot of the things that I've heard other people say, and I think that's really coming into focus, is that what if it's been a series of missed opportunities and almost theirs, but not quite there,
mhm.
which I don't disagree with whatsoever. It is kind of where I'm coming from. There was a really good piece at Polygon that talked about this that I think really encapsulated how what if how how the series missed the mark, and that taking these alternate paths is a really good idea, and it's something that Marvel Comics has done for many years. What if this happened? What if this happened? The problem inherent in this is that it forces the MCU and Marvel, to look at a lot of the things that have happened, over the last 15 years and change,
Mhm.
and say, that wasn't so good. What if this happened instead? And I think what we got was the MCU's refusal to say that anything that they have done has not been good,
Yeah.
which is a problem. Like I think an example that the Polygon piece cited was imagine if we had an episode of what if Clint Barton died at Vormir instead of Natasha. What would that look like? But that would
Mhm.
require the MCU to say we shouldn't have killed Natasha, which obviously they're not willing to do. So I think as a result, a lot of what we got from What If is fun larks. You know,
Mhm.
a lot of like, what if Darcy and Howard the Duck had an egg together, or uh, what if Happy had Hulk powers, or what if the Hulk birthed a race, kind of birthed a race of kaiju monsters, and we just did Marvel but Godzilla
Mhm.
basically, and all the Falcon and Valkyrie and Shang Chi had a kaiju. What would that look like? And so a lot of it's just like, oh, that's kind of fun, but it's so inconsequential,
Right.
you know. And even like one of the more really fun episodes, are like really enjoyable episodes, which was like what if but cowboys, where it was like what if 1800s, where you see Shang-Chi and Kate Bishop as cowboys. You're like, oh, that's a fun idea.
Mhm.
It's really good to see Kate Bishop as a cowboy. But also, what even is this?
Mhm.
Also, side note, not important. Kate Bishop has not once ever in her life been that cool like she is in that episode. She is not a cool cowboy. Nowhere in her is she a cool cowboy. It's a great episode. Haley Seinfeld is doing a lot of Vi Arcane, but yeah, and then the series just kind of like, it is so genre typical of like, and then spoilers, I guess. It ends with Captain Carter dying to save everyone else, and it's like that's such a typical end to like how you do this, like that's just so boring. Like, and the
Mhm.
woman say, the woman kind of quasi lead character, because I think Captain Carter has like been the most consistent character throughout. What if it's like, yeah, she died to save everyone? It's like that's so blasé.
Mhm.
I will say I did like, there were some fun performances. I liked having Devery Jacobs back as Kahari in the last couple episodes, and also in the last couple episodes you have Asgardian Storm, which I think is really fun. But that
Oh.
also kind of illustrates a big point, a stumbling block, I think, for What If, which is like it both can't really look at its own canon and be like, well, here's how we change that, but also it can't veer away from it, like it can't do
Mhm.
X-Men, and it can't do a lot of Spider-Man, and it can't do a lot of Fantastic Four. you know
Right.
which is like, that's the way that like you really branch out in like new and weird storylines, but it's so like closed in. That is What If. Let's move on to our next show, which is Skeleton Crew. checking back in on after a couple weeks off. So what are we thinking about Skeleton Crew?
I lost myself with it for a little while there. There were a couple episodes that I was just kind of like, "Oh my god, can we keep moving? Like I feel like we're not doing anything." But now we're back in the realm of I'm very excited to see where this is going to go. Are these children going to be successful on their own? Will Jude Law's character ever like come out of what he's currently involved in? Like I'm intrigued, but I still don't know if I would call this show a success. Like you know what I mean? Like it has its ups and it has its downs, but I think I need to wait till like it's completely done to be like, I don't, I really like this, or overall this was blah, or overall this was good.
Yeah, for me, I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah.
I think once we got over like the first 3 episodes of like, here's what the show is. After that, I think it's been cooking really well.
Mhm.
You know,
That's fair.
becoming like this really enjoyable, episodic fare of like, a bunch of kids going to a bunch of kids plus Jude Law going to a different planet every week, and it's like, oh, this is really good. Like,
I'm also very like intrigued to find out why there's all this like secrecy around at Adam. Like
mm,
why was 33 ordered to scrape it out and then destroy it from his memory? Like, all these different like it's very I want to know more. Why do these kids not realize there's anything outside of Adam? Like obviously yes, there's this pirating issue of supposedly it's the land of plenty, but like these kids don't see it as that. So like what is the truth? Like what
mhm.
is the real story behind Adam? And also, what is Jude Law? What exactly is he? Because he's an enigma. Like, his character is truly an enigma because he has multiple names. He's clearly done some pirating, but he also has enough training to know how to wield the force. And it's like, what are you?
I mean, they're clearly going to say that he's like a escaped novitiate or something,
Yeah.
like escaped Jedi child.
I think either that or he's just a force sensitive that just never made it with the Jedi because, the timing didn't work out,
Mhm.
which is also a possibility. But like he does know how to deal with a lightsaber because he picked that motherfucker up and just was like, "Oh, let me just do this."
Yeah,
I will say I wasn't sure how to feel about KB, but after this latest episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, KB is just so amazing. Like the amount of shit she goes through without ever saying anything to people is just phenomenal.
yeah,
And like her and Wim working together to ultimately save her life because her equipment has stopped working was so cool.
yeah. No, the most recent episode was a really good like disability story.
Mhm.
Like it's a really good and succinct representation of disability.
Yep. And somewhat invisible disability at that because she talks about how, she's like she doesn't realize that I can't do the same things that she can. And it's like, yeah, because in her eyes she sees you walking around just fine. She doesn't think that there's anything wrong with you. But there is.
Right.
Because if that headband goes dead, she's dead.
Right. It is a kind of like almost toxic positivity of like having someone in your life who has something, and you're like, no, no, you
Mm,
can still do all the things that you used to do. You're fine. I don't see you any
yeah,
differently than you used to be, which feels like a good and right thing to say, but it's also,
very toxic.
yeah, not the thing that is always needed.
I also appreciate that, like, as a parallel to that happening, we've got her up trying to climb with Neil and coming into that same roadblock of thinking that, oh, Neil, you can just push through, you'll be fine. Like, she's definitely got the mindset of if I can do it, everyone else should be able to do it. And Neil is a small elephant who has pudgy hands. He is not going to climb very easily. You need to slow down.
But I also do think like that's so essential to like how we were introduced to her character
Mhm.
of like,
Yeah.
here is, essentially a rich mayor's daughter, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
who does not have to suffer any consequences. Anything that goes wrong, anything that her house that goes wrong, she can erase a robot's memory.
Yep.
So she does not ever have to like feel the consequence of anything that's happening, and she can be as reckless as she feels that she has to be.
And I appreciate that, like, that is her storyline for this show, is that, like, she's being pushed out of that boundary to realize outside of your little cozy home that you live in with your mom and your droids and your robots, you are not safe. You are not invincible. You need to slow down and think logically. You cannot be reckless, and
Right.
that's something she's slowly learning.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's slowly learning how to be helpful towards her fellow adventure seekers. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're friends yet. Like, she's definitely feeling friendly towards them, but I feel like she still keeps herself at a distance from Neil and Wim. And so, like, I feel like they're not quite friends yet, but like she definitely is starting to show a fondness for them. As we see in this episode where she slows down and she's like, okay, how can I adapt this situation so that Neil and I can both move and keep this pace and get accomplished what we need to get accomplished.
Right. Well, and she also kind of feels like the deconstruction of the like stories of like the princess who just so desperately wants to like get out of the castle and live like a normal life, and it's like that is so
Mhm.
on the face of it offensive because you have everything.
Mhm.
You have everything that you could ever possibly want, and you are so like I said, desperate to like yearn for that something new that you have no idea what you're walking through. You have no idea how dangerous it is or
Mhm.
how unsteady your footsteps are about to be. And she assumes that like that's the good thing to do, and she can just drag like we were saying, she can just drag KB into it because why not? So yeah, I think all that's really really interesting. But yeah, I'm very much enjoying it so far. Although I was thinking about this the other day of how now we have like two more episodes left of the show, and it's so endemic of the problem I have with like a lot of these Disney Plus shows, where it's like you spend I feel like we spend so long just like getting into like what the actual show is. Like, like I said, we spent like three
Mhm.
episodes just like getting into a groove of like, here's the show, only to like really have like 5 episodes where it's like, here's the show, like it's really pure and distilled form, and now it's over.
Yeah, they still have to address the what the parents are doing too. Like,
Right.
they only briefly touch on it like every episode, and I'm like, we're gonna need to figure this out in the next couple episodes because you're almost done. You're almost out of time.
Let's continue on to our next show, which is Creature Commandos, which I am once again going to be talking about. I think it only has like one more episode, so I can't talk about it too much more. But I continue to really enjoy the show. I've been really impressed by it. It is still so incredibly gory and messy.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are a lot of moments where it's like, oh, we didn't need to go that hard. We don't need to be that much. I almost kind of enjoy it for that, almost in spite of itself. But I think just like a lot of the episodic structures and character work and writing has just been really strong, and it does I think takes these a lot of these monstrous characters and that it introduces as like extremely violent and monstrous and
Mhm.
going, no, no, no. Here's where they're coming from. Here's their backstory. Here's the thing they've been through. And at the end of it, you're going to care deeply about them. And my initial reaction to that was, you're out of your fucking mind. There's no possible way I'm going to care about the weasel. And then they give me a whole episode of the weasel making friends with a bunch of children and then watching them have to be burned alive in a school because a bunch of adults don't understand what's happening. And you're like, oh
Mhm.
no, I care so much about the weasel. And it does that, it does that a couple times over the course of the show where you're just like, you're out of your minds making me care about these people, and I do so much. So I think a lot of it's just it is so well done. I'm gonna be really interested to see how it wraps up. I still enjoy a lot of the vocal performances here. Indira Varma as Lady Frankenstein or the Bride of Frankenstein is so good as like the kind of quasi lead, along with like Frank Grillo. But you also have like Alan Tudyk and David Harbour as Frankenstein. Which, side note, Frankenstein is 100% an incel in the show. I don't know if the show knows that it's doing that, but I really hope that it does. Because you get a bunch of scenes in the show of Frankenstein going, "The Bride of Frankenstein was made for me, and I love her, and she doesn't realize she loves me yet." And you're like, that is an incel.
That is a very negative way to look at females, sir.
And I'm just so desperate. I so desperately hope that James Gunn understands that this is an incel. Because if he doesn't, I'm really concerned. Let's move on to our next show, which is Silo on Apple TV, which you're checking back in with. You know, the thing I love about Silo is that it's such a weird little sci-fi show of like, what
Mhm.
if humanity was stuck in a silo? Well, it'll have things that are like, ooh, let's talk about tape, and let's talk poison food. And then casually, it'll just have one of the best performances that I've seen all year. Specifically, I can't remember exactly which episode it was, but there's a scene between Ian Glenn and the mayor, and
Mhm.
Ian Glenn is acting his ass off, and you're just like, oh my god, this is such a good scene.
Yeah.
And
I
Silo
can't
does
remember
that.
which episode it is either.
Yeah, but Silo does. I think it's episode 6. But Silo just does that over and over again, and you're like, this hits so hard. Like the monologue that Ian Glenn gives is so good.
Mhm.
Like it's one of the best performances that I've seen him ever give, and it's just
That one, and I also really liked his performance when he's trying to get past the barricade
mhm,
to get down to the down belows, and he's like, "Well, I'm a doctor. There's someone that's pregnant." Like, he's basically like asserting authority he does not have
right.
and hoping that it will win him favors, and it does.
Hmm.
At the same time, it's like he's such a good performer, and I enjoy what few scenes we've gotten with him this season, and like the comments that says to Walker when he's like, "Thank you for taking care of her all these years." That shows that despite being estranged from Juliet, he always still loved her.
Yes.
And, it's just, so good. The other thing I want to say about these episodes is you never know who is going to come on the side of goodness
Hmm.
at any given moment. Like,
Right.
I think about, especially with this season with Sims's wife.
Oh yeah.
Um, she has been breaking protocol left and right. Whereas in season one, you truly thought she was as much the enemy as her husband. And yet, even her husband's starting to like not toe that company line anymore either because he's been demoted. He has been demoted from being the head of security to being the judge, which he feels is not a good position for him. He knows it's because he got in trouble. And it's just such an interesting dynamic to have those two characters that seemed so centered on being in the mayor's pocket to now being ones that are likely to work against him, right? And keep the people that are being thrown under the bus for this action. Shirley and what's the other guy's name? Is it Knox?
Yeah, Knox.
Knox and Shirley. Like she helped them escape. And and she continues to lie about it, but she also continues to do sneaky things at her job to get around it. And like the mayor tries to threaten her and she's just kind of like, okay, whatever. Like she Mrs. Sims just does not give a shit this season. She's just like, I'm here to protect my son, and that is it.
Yeah, yeah. What it's so interesting the way of like none of these are altruistic choices.
No,
You know, she helps mechanical, but like all of it is self-serving, or
absolutely.
not even self-serving, but like it is working to her specific agenda. And like in that way, a lot of the season has felt like the closest successor to Game of Thrones that I
Hmm.
think we've had. like even more so than like House of the Dragon, of like a bunch of characters just doing things for their own purposes.
Right. Like for example, Walker. She has been steadfastly with Mechanical, she's gung ho. It's clear that her allegiance is to them and their needs and their desires. And then we've got this, these last couple episodes, the mayor has used her ex-wife against her. And now she's like, "You know what? I need to protect my chronically ill ex-wife. And so I'm going to do that against Mechanical, but it's also not for the mayor either. Like she does do what the mayor wants, but not really. You know what I mean? Like she toes that line just enough to be able to make sure that her ex-wife is safe. Prior to this season, she was that character that was steadfast and you knew she was going to be Mechanical from the moment she was born to the moment she died, and you didn't question her allegiance. And now you're kind of like, I don't want to question Walker, but we have to question Walker because she's not doing things that we would necessarily deem appropriate for our allegiance. We're not necessarily rooting for some of her decisions.
Right.
And that itself is the human condition. Like our allegiances will change based on our circumstances.
Right. Well, and I also appreciate the way that the mayor is so unambiguously a villain,
Yeah.
but the season has so painstakingly laid out why he behaves the way he behaves and
Hmm.
why he thinks the things that he thinks.
Yeah.
And it even makes the case that he's kind of right. We don't like the things that he's doing, but he's also kind of right.
Right. Exactly. He is literally at its core, on paper, what he's doing is preserving the safety of the silo, the longevity of the silo and its food source and its energy source. Like he's trying to protect what they have.
Yeah.
People aren't happy about it because that's not what they want, but he knows with enough knowledge that the outside world is still not inhabitable. So he's trying to protect them whether they like it or not. And do we like it the way he goes about it? Absolutely not. Do we think he should be a little less murderous and backstabby? Yes. But we know at the core why he's doing what he's doing.
Right. Well, and we even know like things that like Shirley and Knox don't know of like yes, if there's something really essential to the human condition that if people do find out that you have been lying to them about the reasons that you can't go outside, they will go outside. Like that is the thing that
Yep.
we know people will do. So yeah, again, we don't like the way that the mayor is doing things, but within the parameters that the show has set up, he is accurate.
It's that whole concept of, well, you've told me I can't do it, so therefore I'm going to force myself to do it. It's the whole you can't go outside. Okay, well, watch me. I'm gonna do it. And I did appreciate there was this really good scene between the mayor and I think he's IT, one of the guys in IT. It might even be his, I forget the character's name, but they have this moment where Knox and Shirley have just created havoc on 133 all the way, breaking down the barricade enough that they're able to get through it and manage to change the barricade to 120 by manipulation with the cops and all that. And the conversation between the mayor and the guy, security, I want to say security, he says, well, they only made it up 10 flights. He goes, uh-huh, and what's on 120? And he's like, I farms. And he goes, exactly, you just gave them un you know an unlimited supply of food. Yes, he's like, yes, you think that's just a small little, no, this is huge. Like he's berating this kid for thinking, oh, they didn't gain much, they only gained 10 floors. Okay, but they gained the floors they needed to survive, and he knows this, and so he's like, you're an idiot. Do we like the way he talks in order to get that message across? Not necessarily, but he speaks the truth. Like
Yeah.
he's like, you're an idiot if you're not thinking 10 steps ahead of them and not realizing that they just manipulated the shit out of you to gain the farms by saying, we'll stop at 120 if you let us make the new barricade be at 120.
That also, I enjoy so much of everything that Juliet is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I love this season where we go from the first season where she is so hyper competent, and she's
Mm-hmm.
still extremely competent this season. Like she does things that 99.9% of everyone who's ever lived would not be able to do.
Yeah, she's literally injured and still managing to do those deep dives and all that stuff, and it's like, yeah, go girl.
Yeah, but you also see, I love how we are seeing her this season being confronted with knowledge that she has never
Hmm.
had,
Right.
and being like on the back foot more. Like I think of like Solo telling her like how what happens to Juliet in Romeo and Juliet,
Yes.
because she doesn't know that Juliet dies at the end of that.
But also, like, there's been so much, like, development with the Juliet side of the story where, we're at the point where we don't know where Solo is now. She came up out of the water and all there is blood, and you're just like, okay, where's the dude? And there's these two crazy teenagers. Where the fuck did they come from? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, wait. So wait, is Solo the only person in this silo? Apparently not.
And if Solo hasn't always been the only person in Silo, where the hell did they come from?
Right, exactly. It's like the moment you feel like you're finally getting headway on answers with this show, they're like, "Oh, let's throw a wrench in that plan because we're gonna add some more questions."
So something really simple that I think like is so fun for like Juliet as a character is Solo talking to her about swimming and like swimming in deep water,
Hmm.
and that moment of like there is a thing where like if you you come up too quickly you could die, and she's like, wait, I can what?
Right, you can get the bends.
Yeah.
Yep,
And her
and she ends up experiencing it.
yeah, and so like her being met with like this knowledge that she couldn't have known, and now like that setting her so much off balance. Like I think it's just so good. And Rebecca Ferguson is just she's so good. Like
Hmm.
she's outstanding. The sheer like physicality of Juliet, I especially think of like the final moments of like this week's episode where like she is constructing a like sword and shield on the spot and just like crouching.
Hmm.
It's like there's just so much. I feel like there's so much specificity of Rebecca Ferguson in that.
Yep,
Just in the sheer way that Juliet moves.
she's just so good.
Our next episode is Ghosts, season 4, episode 8 and 9, and this is the part of the show where we cover episodes that premiered roughly a month ago.
I feel like we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to comment on the genius, the genius that is Sam pretending to be Nancy.
Yes,
Sam embodying Nancy because she's being possessed.
this
Like, it's so genius. And Pete being stuck inside, and him having to pretend like he is himself and not Pete
mhm.
the whole time he's around his family is just, this is ghosts stretching their comedic muscles, and it's so perfect.
It's really funny. Although not to be all rules lawyer about this, but under the conditions that this show has set up, Jay should still be able to see the ghost after this.
Yep.
He should. They're not going to do that because they're cowards, but he should still be able to see the ghost.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I understand why they're not going to do it, but yeah, you're right. They could, and it'd be so much
They
fun
could.
if he could continue to see the
Like if we were
ghosts.
being true to the rules that have been set up, he would.
Also, can I just say that Jay's sister is my new favorite character? Like, I freaking love her.
She's so funny, and here's
She hears everything. Sam tells her all this information, and she just takes it. She's like, "Okay, sounds great. I will help you guys with this task that you need to accomplish."
here's the thing. The thing I love about Bela is that her most consistent character trait is that she wants to fuck a ghost,
Yeah.
and that's really funny. Like out of everything that we have seen her character do on the show, that is the truest and most consistent part of her, and that's just really funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed like those both of those A plots throughout these two episodes. But also, I really enjoyed the backstory of Thor and Sass's friendship.
Oh my god, yeah. I was like, "Oh, that's so cute. I love that."
It's really sweet. Like I really like that. It's a very basic thing, but I really like that Thor just learned how to speak Sass's language.
And I love that, like, the reason they like are fighting in these episodes is because Thor thought he was doing him a favor by helping him lose his virginity, and he's just like, "Thank you for being my friend, but no, you missed the mark on this one." But also, can we appreciate that the writers have finally remembered that Carol exists in this
I was
house?
just gonna say that.
They mention it twice. First of all, she shows up, and then second of all, they mention it when Pete goes to visit his daughter, and Sam's like, "Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine why she would be upset at seeing the two people that own the house where both her parents were killed in." And I like that Jay is naming the restaurant after his dad. Like, that's very
Yeah,
sweet.
it's really nice. Also, I'm sure I've asked this question before, but I really want to know what the deal financially is between Sonic and CBS. Like, what is Sonic getting out of this that they are mentioned each and every week on the show?
I have no idea. But I mean, it honestly, it reminds me of the days of Teen Wolf where Toyota was
Right,
everywhere on
right.
Teen Wolf. Like everyone owned a Toyota. And I'm like, none of these teenagers are rich enough to have Toyotas. Why are they all have Toyotas? Because Toyota, whatever. But I feel like Sonic must be a sponsor or something because
Yeah,
like
like I just want to know on a business level what kind of money is switching hands here.
I mean, I feel that, Jay. I love Sonic too, so I feel your desire to eat it all the
Yeah,
time. I just am like, what? Why are we? Like, yeah, because the whole, oh, she's gonna find out about all his secret Sonic runs. Like,
I think they mentioned it like 5 times in these two episodes.
they mentioned it so many times. Also, before we move on, I one of the funniest lines I think was towards the end when Bayla's asking about her car and Sam is just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's at a rest stop in New Jersey. We're not going to go get it for you. You have to go get it yourself." Also the meta line where she talked about how she hated zombies and I was like, "Nod to iZombie there, Rose McIver."
Mhm.
Great Christmas episode. Really enjoyed it.
On to our next show, which is Star Trek Lower Deck, Season 5, Episode 10, The New Next Generation. And this was the series finale of Lower Decks. So, what did you think of this?
Personally, I love every moment of this series finale. It had everything a Star Trek fan could want. Like, it truly did. Like, it was so fun. It had an unnecessary, totally overreacted battle between two different groups of Klingons. It was fantastic. I greatly, greatly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it so much. It's so much fun. I'm gonna miss the show so much.
Damn you, Drew. Getting me into this.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Really a delight. Really went out swinging.
Also, can we comment on the at the in the final moments where Boimler realizes he's no longer lower decks?
Oh yeah, yeah,
He's like, "Wait, what do you mean I'm in charge of people? What?"
yeah. Ending it with Ransom as the captain and Boimler and Mariner as the first officers is so funny.
Yes.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
It's such a recipe for disaster, and I want to see every moment of it. Can we have a new series called The New Next Generation and it just be them
Yes.
causing havoc on the Cerritos?
Yeah. Just what an utter nightmare it's gonna be. Like even just simply Mariner and Boimler to be first officers. It's just gonna be
Nothing will get accomplished. Nothing
no.
will get accomplished. Also, I appreciated that Rutherford. I liked the whole through line of Rutherford thinking at first that fell out of love with the Cerritos, even though that's been his big love this whole freaking time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he realized he's fallen out of love with his mechanical like attachment, whatever, to his face. And so he takes it off. He's like, fuck it. I don't need this. Like,
such a delight.
So good.
I can't believe that the show is just not going to be around anymore.
I will go back to the beginning and finally watch the first 2 seasons. It'll be so weird going back to the beginning because they'll be so much younger, so much so inexperienced. It's gonna be so fun.
You're going back to like peak Chaos Mariner.
And peak clumsy, stupid Boimler, and I'm here for it.
Yes. Let's round out this week with our last show, which is What We Do in the Shadows, Season 6, Episode 11, titled The Finale, which is the series finale of What We Do in the Shadows. So, what did we think of this?
First of all, I thought it was very meta that the reason for this quote unquote ending is that the documentors are like, nothing is happening, we're done. We're out of here. We've been here for 10 years, nothing has happened, we're out. I felt like that was the funniest thing about this episode. And also Guillermo's reaction to it is just very, very like over the top. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. But like, it still wasn't I didn't love this episode, but I didn't hate it either. I still enjoyed it. Like,
Right.
was it the strongest series finale I've ever seen? No, probably not. But it was very wacky and weird, just like this show has always been.
The thing about this finale is that it looks at like 10 different finales and goes, what if we just did them all?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I gotta respect it to a certain extent.
we've got Laszlo attempting to create a bride for his creature, because the creature is trying to have sex with anything that moves, and he's like, well, maybe if I make a bride for him, he'll just have sex with the other undead body. Like, what? And then he says to Nandor, what is your least like quality about what's her name, because I think I'll just borrow that for this new body. I'm just like, I can't. Laszlo is ridiculous.
Although I did.
And we saw the return of Jackie Daytona.
Yes, I was just going to say. The return of Jackie Daytona.
I knew that would be your thing.
Regular human bartender.
Regular human bartender.
I love Jackie Daytona so much.
I also kind of found it really funny, the whole dream idea at the end of the episode, where it was Nandor and Guillermo wake up and they're normal humans, but like they had this dream that they were vampires.
Right. The New Heart ending.
Everything was a dream. And it was like, I feel like in a way, yes, I know that they were thinking of the Guillermo Nandor shippers in that sense, but I also feel like it was kind of a cheap shot at that. And so it was like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like,
I think it was them going like, this is as much of this as we're gonna be able to do. This is as close
as we're willing to do.
Yeah,
this is all we're willing to do.
This is as close to the mark as we're gonna get. So yeah, it was certainly a mixed bag. It's just so much, and honestly, I can't really imagine What We Do in the Shadows ending any other way.
Yeah,
like it is as deeply weird and off kilter as the show's ever been. I was kind of into it.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. But I didn't love it either. So, but I also feel like that's how I kind of felt about What We Do in the Shadows overall, is that like I enjoyed myself, but it will probably never end up on a top 10 list for me just because I enjoyed myself, but it's not a show that necessarily something I'll probably rewatch, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, that is our week in TV. Next week, we're losing a bunch of shows. Our lineup is going to look very different. We will see what that ends up looking like.
It'll be interesting.
January is always a slow start for TV. Things don't really start to come back from hiatus for a couple more weeks. So we shall manage. Mads, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Blue Sky and Twitter, I guess. I'm there, but I'm not really there at Dorothy NYC 89, and then Tumblr at Mads World 15.
And you can follow me on Blue Sky at Drew Koenig, and everywhere else at that username. And you can follow the podcast on all your social media platforms at Not on a TV Podcast. Also, find our link tree at linktree.com/TV Podcast, and that has all of our social media handles plus our Discord server, which I have not forgotten about, despite allegations. Where did these allegations come from? Not important. Did they come from me? Perhaps.
You're like,
You can find previous episodes of the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, along with whatever other podcasting device you use. Give us a ring if we are not up on whatever platform you are currently using to listen to your podcast, and we will attempt to rectify that. You can also find our full podcast directory on our Libsyn feed at libsyn.com/not-on-TV podcast. Be sure to leave a review and subscribe on wherever you are listening. Every little bit helps. Don't forget, you can email us at notonttvpodcast@gmail.com with any thoughts, comments, or questions you may have about the show or whatever you want to send our way. And as we close out this week, please remember, going into the new year, the ocean is none of your business. And you have no business being in there. So mind your own business. Good day.